Welcome to Hazardous Waste and Public Law. This 8-week course is an introduction to basic and applied laws in the field. The course will provide a general overview of laws associated with hazardous waste management, major environmental laws that focus on hazardous waste, environmental auditing, and industrial waste regulations. There are 7 objectives to this course. After successfully completing the course, you should be able to 1. Describe problems and issues with hazardous waste and laws affecting disposal, violations, and codes. 2. Be able to define basic terminology used when referencing hazardous waste in the law. 3. Be able to detail the different types of legalities, violations, and unethical behavior. 4. Describe and apply the fundamental laws to hazardous waste. And 5. List the environmental regulations and describe the associated process to enforce hazardous waste infractions and violations. 6. Be able to define the term liability as it pertains to hazardous waste management. And finally, 7. Be able to analyze and evaluate environmental issues affecting society as they relate to hazardous waste management. As a 100-level course, this may be the first class you're taking with the American Public University System, or APUS. If so, I'd like to briefly go over some of the highlights of the course that'll really increase your educational experience. The first item I want to mention is the syllabus is your most important document. Everything within the syllabus is important as it goes over the course expectations and your deliverables. The syllabus mentions the extension policy. Course extensions will be very rare in this class. This is an 8-week class and you're expected to finish in 8 weeks. There are waivers for military deployments and major medical situations. If you feel you need an extension, please contact your instructor immediately. The second item is citations and how to reference material. Being a 100-level class, there is no expectation for precise referencing. The expectation throughout the program is that you will use the APA 6th edition and reference and cite all material into the 6th edition standard. With 100-level courses, you're introduced to the APA 6th edition. By 400-level courses, you're expected to use it every situation you have. The 200 and 300 level courses are kind of a phasing in period, so take this opportunity to learn the APA 6th edition. Every course has assignments. Assignments are due at one particular time or another. Something always comes up where you feel you cannot make the due date. If so, you need to contact the instructor as soon as possible and work out some kind of alternative due date. But the key here is early communication with the instructor. The last item I want to mention is the plagiarism policy. The syllabus has a link to the student handbook which contains the plagiarism policy. There's a specific set of rules and guidelines on how you can reference material and essentially not get in trouble by appearing to copy or steal other people's information. There are Turnitin software programs that APUS uses to check student work for any potential plagiarism, and the plagiarism policy is taken very seriously at APUS. So it's very important that you review the plagiarism policy. This course focuses predominantly upon 2 environmental laws. The first is the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA, and the second is the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, or CERCLA. Our first week starts with a little history, and what better place than to start with a little history of CERCLA and the Love Canal. Your reading for the first week includes a detailed history of the Love Canal. The highlights are presented here, and the student should know that the Love Canal consisted of a chemical site owned by the Hooker Chemical Company in Niagara Falls, New York. The Hooker Chemical Company produced a number of chemicals to support the World War II effort, but also afterwards. There were no environmental laws at the time to cover the waste, so the waste was actually dumped into an abandoned canal that was close by. Over time, this land was eventually sold to a school district, and an elementary school was built upon this abandoned canal dump. Over time, chemicals seeped up, and there was a federal and state health emergency declared after school children were exposed to these toxic chemicals. The resulting public outcry resulted in the CERCLA legislation being passed, and the rest is history. This first week is basically an overview or history of the hazardous waste problem as we know it today, and really sets us up for what we're going to be covering in weeks 2 through 8. A couple items to think about as we go through the rest of the class are, how big is this hazardous waste issue really? Are we talking 1 million pounds of hazardous waste? 10 million? 100 million? Billions of pounds? And once we know how much we're talking about, we can start considering what are the dangers or risks of that waste? What are the different properties? How does it affect you and me? We've already mentioned 2 of the laws that we'll be covering in this class, RCRA and CERCLA. Keeping these 3 items in mind as we go through the class will give you that general focus on what we're actually trying to cover here.